And myself and a fellow by the name of Tom Lewis developed a new family of baseball stats that we call total bases generated. And we have a website called totalbasesgen.com. So feel free to go out there. Some of the things I'm going to say today are on the website, and we have access on that site to all of our reports. We have about 25 reports. Okay, and we get data for our site, for our stat. It comes from retrosheet.org. I assume a lot of you have heard about RetroSheet. It provides play-by-play data going back, through the entire 20th century, actually. Our database goes back to 1911. So any data you'll see on our reports are from 1911 through 2024. And we also use data from the Layman database, by the way. Layman database you might have heard of. If you're a SABR member, you might know that the Layman database was started in the early 90s by a guy named Sean Layman, who and last year turned it over to SABR. And SABR's maintaining it now. So, and that's mostly yearly data, yearly stats, whereas RetroSheet is play-by-play information. And by the way, RetroSheet is a volunteer organization, makes this data free. So if anybody's interested in RetroSheet, you could really check it out, and they're looking for volunteers to help score games from like the early 20th century and Negro League games. So they're looking for volunteers, in other words. It's a wonderful, wonderful project. Okay, so this stat is based on this premise that offense equals bases. And what I mean by that is when a player comes up to bat, we all know that what he's trying to do is he's trying to get on base in any way he possibly can. And the other thing he's trying to do is he's trying to move players who happen to be on base. He's trying to move them around, right? Everybody that plays a half an inning of baseball understands this. And to score, right? And you can't win if you don't get runs. We just figured that to measure a player's offensive productivity, what we could do is simply count the bases that the player generates. And our plan, what we do is we count every base that a player generates. We count every base that the team generates. That's the premise. That's what we mean by offense equals bases. Offense means the generation of bases. Now you may be thinking, well, okay, that's cool, but runs are really what determines whether a team wins or not. And that's true, but there's a very high statistical correlation between bases and runs, like 97% or so, which is kind of a silly thing to even have to say. We all know that to get runs, you have to get bases, right? You have to generate and accumulate bases. But even if a player doesn't score a run, like say he hits a double and then he gets stuck on second, the inning ends. That double is still offense, right? It's still counted. It's still part of his offensive productivity. We look at it meaning every single base that is gained is part of the offense. A walk is offense. Bases from an error are offense. So that's our premise. So that leads us to count all bases from every single play. I don't know of any other stat that does that. If you look at something like batting average looks at hits, outs, and errors. Errors, it counts as outs. So it's only looking at those three types of plays, and there's a lot of baseball that it ignores. That's at-bats, what batting average looks at, right? At-bats. That amounts to about 86 to 87% of the plays in baseball. But more importantly, it only counts about 46% of the bases. So a stat like batting average essentially ignores over half of the bases generated in baseball. So we wanted to fix that. We count them all, regardless of how the bases are generated. So this is the very premise of this stat. We're sort of agnostic. We don't say certain plays are better than other plays. We don't say, oh, well, it's a walk or a hit by pitch, therefore we're not going to count those bases. We count them all. And we feel that all the bases are part of a team's offense. So you can't accurately measure offense unless you look at all bases. It's that simple. We attribute those bases, every base that's generated, we attribute it either to the batter, and that's actually like 95% of the bases are attributed to the batter. And a small percentage are attributed to base runners, because base runners can also generate offense. A steal, for instance, you're generating offense, right? Okay. Bases can also be lost by base runners. So we deduct bases that are lost. All right? And that's why we use the word total, by the way. That's why we call it T.B.G, total bases generated, because we're looking at everything. Okay, so the important thing with a stat like this is, when it comes to counting bases, is how you count the bases. Because the counts have to be valid to be meaningful. Obviously, right? So I'm going to go through the way we count bases for a little bit here, okay? I've got a few slides here. But the main thing is, bases generated by the batter as a result of his plate appearance go towards the batter, okay? This is just like slugging percentage, and there's a stat called total bases you may have heard about. Total bases is actually the denominator in the slugging percentage calculation. What's different is we count hits, we count walks, hit by pitch, errors, whatever, however the bases are gained. But the other really important thing is we also count for the batter advances by base runners as a result of the batter's plate appearance. Okay, so RBIs sort of count, like an RBI, if we go back one or two, an RBI counts this base right here, right from here to here. If you hit a batter from here to here, you get an RBI. Well, with our stat, we count moving base runners on any base. Okay, so we sort of take slugging percentage and RBIs and we put them on steroids, and then we come up with T.B.G. So, again, the bases that the batter gains for himself, and that's what slugging percentage counts. That's the only thing that slugging percentage counts, by the way. And does everybody know how slugging percentage is calculated? You count the number of bases. Okay, and WOBA counts bases too, by the way. WOBA counts more bases than slugging percentage, but it doesn't count them all. And advances by base runners as a result of the batter's plate appearance. So here's a real simple play. And I use this sort of clip art to demonstrate a few things in here. So here's a play. Here's the batter, right? You can see he's got the bat on his shoulder, right? There's a runner on first. The batter hits a single. Okay. Batter gets to first. The runner on first ends up on third. Okay, so here's the result. This is where the players end up. So we score that as 3 for the batter. It's just that simple, right? 1 for the single, 2 for moving up from second to third for a total of 3. So that's how we score that. Slugging percentage would count only this base, right? No matter how many people are on base, no matter how many bases they gain, it ignores all that. Every single is treated exactly the same in slugging percentage. And in batting average, every hit is treated exactly the same, right? So they're not all the same, of course. This is 3 bases are better than 1. So we give credit for that with this stat. A few more of our rules. Outs are scored as a 0 for the batter. Okay, so 1 out is a 0. Double play, that's 2 outs that the batter causes, is a -1. Triple play, standard triple play, which is kind of rare, you might know. Still, we count it as a -2. Now, when I say standard double play, which is really important here because there's a lot of double play scenarios that we have to take into consideration. Standard double play, what I mean is where both outs are forced. That's essentially what a standard double play is. And you've seen a gazillion of them watching TV, okay? But non-standard double plays, we don't count as a -1. We count as a 0 for the batter. And a non-standard double play means a double play where the base runner makes a mistake. Like, say, he gets a double off, we essentially, the base runner has essentially lost that base. So we have a very strict accounting of bases. If a player loses one or more bases, he is debited those bases he lost. So if he's on third and he somehow gets thrown out without being forced to run on a hit or something, he gets a -3. And the reason we do that is he's on third, those 3 bases were attributed to some player, and now he just lost those 3 bases. Okay, so therefore we have a -3. And I'll show you some examples of this. This will make a little more sense as we go ahead. Force outs. Force outs are scored as a 0 in our scoring, by the way. So in this case, very similar situation, man on first, batter hits a ground ball, and the man on first is out at second. By the way, if you see an X over a player like this, it means that the runner is out at that base, okay? So, anyway, the force out, nothing is really gained here, right? We started with a man on first, the play ends with a man on first, 0 bases were actually gained, so the batter gets a 0 on a force out. In a sense, sacrifice is the exact opposite of a force out. What happens here is we say the batter bunts, the runner on first ends up on second, okay? But the batter is out. But in this case, a base is actually gained. So in a sacrifice, this type of sacrifice, the batter gets credit for 1 base. Okay, and this illustrates the fact that the batter may be out on a play, but he can still generate bases. All right? Okay, and here's a play. It's a little more complicated. We have 2 guys on base, right? You see them on first and second. Player hits a ground ball, and the shortstop tosses to the second baseman and forces out the runner on second base, right? The runner on first. So the batter ends up on first. You can see he's still got the bat there, right? We don't mean to indicate that he's on first base with the bat. It just indicates that that's the batter, okay? But we see here the man who was on second ends up on third. So this part of the play is scored as a force out, which is a 0 for the batter, but he did gain 1 here because the batter on second moved up to third. So there was an advance. So he gets a 1 for that particular play. Okay, more scoring rules. Bases gained on walks, hit by pitch, catcher's interference, uncaught third strikes are scored as 1 for the batter, plus 1 for each base runner forced to move up. So they're scored sort of like a hit, right? So if there's a man on first, a guy gets a single, and the runner moves up to second, we score that as 2. If there's a man on first and the batter gets a walk, we score that as 2 also, because now you have a man on first and second. Okay.
But the batter doesn't get credit for the guy advancing on the walk?
Oh, the batter does,
oh,
yes,
the batter.
yes,
Okay.
yes. So we score it almost like a hit.
So it's like a single?
It's like a single, yeah. But of course on a walk, they're not moving up that extra base, right? If they do, then we treat that as a running play and we score that for the runner.
So if a guy's on first and a guy walks?
Yes, he gets 2.
The batter gets 2.
The batter gets 2.
The runner doesn't get anything?
The runner doesn't get anything.
Okay.
But if the guy, for some reason there's an error, and then the guy on second continues on the third,
he gets that one.
He gets a base for this. Essentially, that's treated like a steal. Yeah. You don't think error should count? Well, that's the one thing that's really the most unconventional thing. But again, if you say that, then you're sort of making a judgment, right? And you're believing the judgment that the official scorer made. And we don't really want to do that, especially since, if you consider that some of the best base runners in baseball history generated a ton of errors. And that would not have happened if they weren't such good base runners. So we don't want to make those judgments. You know, we want to just say, this is how much, we're essentially saying, how many good things happen when this guy is up to base? Good things being bases, right? And we don't really, at least that's our premise for our stat. And if it's any consolation to you, errors, bases from errors amount to a very small number of total bases. Yeah. I mean, you can make the same sort of error about
But I mean, it doesn't count for on-base percentage.
Right, it doesn't count towards on-base percentage. On-base percentage doesn't count everything. Yeah.
And you're caught stealing, it's a -1?
Yes, and we're getting to that. But yes, absolutely. So here's a really important rule. Yeah, come on in, have a seat. Excuse me. A base runner thrown out trying for an extra base on a batted ball when he's not forced to run is debited to the base runner. Okay, so let's say there's this single, right? The guy's on first and there's a single, but he gets thrown out at third, the base runner. Okay, he didn't have to go to third. He wasn't forced to go to third, right? He was safe at second, and then he took off. And I have a play in here. Let's see if that's the next slide. Yes, okay. So this is very similar to the play we had earlier, right? Batter, there's the guy on first. Batter hits a single. Fine. Runner on first gets thrown out at third. Now again, so this is that rule. The runner was safe at second. He was not forced to go to third. He went to third on his own choice. So what we score this as a -2 for that runner. The runner gets a -2 because he chose to go to third. He lost 2 bases that were previously credited. Now, by the way, for the batter gets 1 for the single, and then he gets 1 for the runner moving up to second. So in that play, the scoring, it gets trickier. The batter gets a 2, the runner gets a -2. Now, by the way, this kind of makes sense because we start with a guy on first, we end with a guy on first. There's no real improvement. And in the scoring, we have a 2 and a -2, which equals 0. So it kind of works out, you know. Go ahead.
I'm trying to form a question I don't have, but it may not make sense. But the runner does not get, so like I'm thinking like, you know, Ty Cobb, Ricky Henderson, sort of really fast.
Yeah.
They would not get the credit for stretching
Well,
the extra base. That would
right.
go to the bat, right?
Our very basic premise is any bases gained from a batted ball, from anything, from a plate appearance,
Okay.
go to the batter. That's our fundamental premise.
Okay.
And that covers 95% of the scoring in this stat, by the way. Yes.
But there's no, so in other words, I don't know who's really slow at bat, you know, Cecil Fielder gets no more credit for, you know, the fact that a guy's twice as fast as another guy doesn't credit him if he's able to score on a play that a slower
Yes,
runner.
well, that's true.
He doesn't, okay, just,
Yeah.
okay.
Mm-hmm. But we do have, when we get to our reports on base running, I'll show you an additional stat that we came up with to sort of augment our base running stats.
Gotcha.
And I think you'll like that.
How about trying to stretch a single to a double and get thrown out?
Let's see here. Okay.
I'm your straight man.
Batter gets a hit, tries to stretch and is thrown out. He gets 0 bases on that play. Now the reason is, let's say there's nobody on base in this scenario. He hits a single, tries to stretch to 2, gets thrown out at second. So the way we would score that, well, a single is 1, but then he just lost 1 base, -1 equals 0. Right? So he goes back to the dugout, just like anybody else who made an out. He contributes nothing, right? However, batting average, that counts as 1. On-base percentage counts hits because they count that as a hit. WOBA counts it. OPS, slugging percentage counts it. OPS counts that out for 2 hits because OPS counts every hit twice, right? So OPS counts it as on base and OPS counts it as slugging, right? So the guy contributed absolutely nothing. I mean, bases are kind of important in baseball. It's in the name of the game, for Christ's sake, okay? And these other stats are giving this guy credit for 0, for zilch. We don't, right? Okay, so what we're really looking at is productivity here, right? So we have a different type of stat. We're not counting exactly the same way the other stats count. And we're not saying these other stats are wrong, although I feel that compared to OPS, this stat is more rigorous and more accurate. Because we don't take 2 old stats and just add them together. 2 old stats that have different denominators, you know. I mean, it's like, well, how do walks count with OPS? Well, that's a tricky one. Half the time they count. Hits count twice. Walks count once. It's like, well, whatever. Okay. Double plays. Okay, let's talk about double plays for a minute, because double plays, we had the code for about, like 200 scenarios for double plays. But, as I said, it's a -1 for the batter And the standard double play is when two runners are forced out regardless of base. So here's a standard double play, right? Got a guy on first, here's this ground ball, and they're both out. They're both forced out, okay? -1 for the batter. Everybody on that, right? Okay, here's another one. Two runners on base. The outs are at third and second. -1 for the batter. This is almost like extending the force out rule, because the force out rule said, well, you know, if you force guys out, even though you're safe on first, you don't get any credit for that, right? Because you didn't gain anything. He actually caused two outs, -1 for the batter. However, in this case, and I don't have a diagram up here for this, if the outs were at first and second and this guy was safe, he would get a -1 for the double play and a +1 for the advance from second to third equals 0. So if it was, the outs were over here and this guy was safe at third, the batter would get a 0 because it adds up to a net 0 for that play. Okay, non-standard double play. Runner is doubled off as a result of a caught liner. You all know what doubled off means. We kind of are saying that's a base running error. So it's a, you know, he was off the base, shouldn't have been, whatever. A batter flies out and the runner tags up and is thrown out. That again, we're debiting the runner for the bases lost. If he was on second, he tried to get up to third and he got thrown out, well then that would be a -2 for the runner, excuse me. Okay, so on a fly out and a tag up and he's out, that's a double play, but it's a non-standard double play. The batter gets a 0, runner gets is debited for the bases lost. Oh, okay, here's some weird little double play. I don't know why I kept this in here, but okay, guy on second, ground ball to the shortstop. Shortstop picks up the ball, the runner's running by, he tags him, throws to first for the out, right? Okay, that's a base running error really for the guy that was on second. He wasn't forced to run, he should have stayed there. He's out, so the guy on second would get a -2 for that.
Why 2?
Well, because he was on second.
Okay.
He had 2 bases, right?
Okay.
Now, let's say he hit a double earlier. So he hit a double, well, he gets 2. Well, now he just kind of messed it up, lost those 2 bases, now he gets a -2. So he's not on base. And so it adds up to a 0, which it should be, because he gained no bases, ultimately.
So if he got thrown out, if he got tagged out, it's really never happened, but if he got tagged out between third and home, he'd lose 3?
Yes, yes. So that's the rule. If the base runner runs on a play where he is not forced and he is out, then he loses, he's debited the bases he lost. So yeah, if he's on third and he does that, then it is a -3.
Same thing if he gets...
And it's our accounting. Again, we've credited those 3 bases previously. Now you just lost 3 bases. It wipes it out. It wipes out those 3 bases.
Is the number you're creating an absolute number or a fraction?
It's an absolute number.
So
Yeah, we don't count fractions.
So it doesn't care how many games I need to play or how many at-bats I need to achieve this? So one guy plays 80 games, one guy plays 162 games.
Yeah, so it's just the number of bases. T.B.G. we're counting bases that a guy.
You didn't think about doing it with a denominator?
Oh, we do. Oh, yeah, we do. We do a lot of stuff with the data once we have it scored. And by the way, in our database, we have close to 16 million plays that we have scored at this point. And we have every one of them scored. And then I'll talk about, when we get through the scoring, then I'll talk about what we do with that data. Okay, we do a lot with this data, by the way.
Maybe this is next.
Yeah.
How about a double steal with one runner gets thrown out?
What would that be? Okay, well what
And
that...
it might depend on if the
Yeah.
guy at second's thrown out and the guy at third is thrown out.
Well, the way we would score each of those separately, essentially. If a double steal, first and second, they move up to second and third. Let's say the guy on second is out at third, he would get a -2. The guy on first moved up, he would get a 1 for the steal, because he just gained 1 base.
So even if
So both base runners would get
the
a...
guy at second gets thrown out and the guy at third is safe, does the guy at third still get 1?
Yes,
Even
yes
though-
he does, yep. So if you
Even though
gain a
that might-
base,
Even though that might be the second out and the sacrifice fly does no good.
we don't care about that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we would score each of those as separate steals. One maybe he lost bases, and one maybe we would score them each separately on that. Okay, strikeouts, scored like any other out. If runners advance after a strikeout, we just score it as a running play. It's a steal, essentially. If a batter successfully reaches first on an uncaught third strike, we kind of score it like a walk, you know? If a runner who's on base because of an uncaught third strike makes it, say he's on first and he makes it to third, well, we would score that the first base goes to the batter, and then any bases beyond one, we attribute it, we score it like a steal. So that would go to the runner. And if in that situation, if a batter is out at first on the uncaught third strike, but the runner moves up to say second, the batter gets one on that because he moved, essentially he's responsible for moving the runner up. It's like the same as a sacrifice, the way that's scored. So baseball has every conceivable play you can imagine many, many times over. You know, and some crazy plays in baseball. And plays where 3 rules or so have to be applied. I haven't showed you some of those plays, but at some point I'm going to do a presentation of the craziest plays in baseball history, where all these different things happen. And but our rules cover all this because we sort of break it down into individual parts and score them individually. Okay, rules for base running plays. Bases gained as a result of steals, balks, wild pitches, pass balls, and errors on pickoff attempts, or errors on throws from the catcher on steals, are credited to the base runner. Essentially, as we said, we score every base. These are bases that are gained when the batter is not hitting the ball. Those are all considered running plays under our scoring system. So for us, there's a lot more running plays than just steals. Okay, any bases gained. Bases lost from caught stealing and pickoffs are debited to the runner, of course, right? So by the way, if you're caught stealing home, you get a -3 because you just lost 3 bases, right? By the way, Tris Speaker got thrown out trying to steal home twice in a game. I think it was in like 1918 or something. And I have that, it appears on one of the reports. I thought that must be a record. Has anybody been thrown out trying to steal home 3 times? I don't think so, or else it would have shown up in one of our reports. Oh, okay, here we go. You know, since there's so many different plays in baseball, we have to have a rule for every individual thing. Bases lost by base runners for interference, passing a runner, or runner hit by a batted ball. Runners are out in all those cases. Those are debited to the runner for the number of bases lost. So I think that wraps up most of our scoring rules.
If a batter hits a triple,
Yeah,
and he's trying to make an inside the park home run,
Yeah.
and he's thrown out at home,
yeah,
what's
0.
Oh,
0.
0?
Yeah. If a batter hits a triple, but he's thrown out trying to score, he's thrown out trying to stretch. That's one of our rules, yeah. If you're thrown out trying to stretch a hit, you get a 0 for that. Because you gained 3, but then you lost 3.
Suppose there was a runner
Yeah,
on second
Okay.
or third that he drove in,
yeah.
and then he tried to make an inside the park home run.
Any runners you move up count. Yeah, so that play that you just described, with the guy scored from second, he would get 2 for that. The batter would get 2.
Not the run.
Don Baylor got caught stealing twice in 1 inning in the same trip around the bases.
Really? Wow, I got to see that one.
He got charged with the caught stealing at second base when the second baseman dropped the ball, and they actually gave the second baseman an error, which is very rare.
Okay,
And then he got thrown out trying to steal third legitimately.
okay.
So he'll get 1 point.
But he was safe at second, huh?
He was safe because of the error, but
Yeah.
it counts as a caught stealing.
Yes, I know. I've seen that in other box scores where a guy moves up and he gets charged with a caught stealing.
So you give him 1 point for
I mean,
that,
come on.
and then -1
But
for
we don't care about any of that.
for really being thrown out third.
Yes, he would get a -2 for being thrown out of third.
So
Oh,
He would get a base for stealing, for reaching second, even though it was an error. We don't.
the official scores very rarely give errors on this kind of plays.
Yeah.
He added the glove and
Yeah.
the ball came
Hey,
out.
I've seen a play where there was I haven't seen it, I've seen it in a box score where Bert Campaneris is ends up getting from first to third on an errant pickoff play at first. They charged him with a pickoff. He made it to third. And then he eventually scored on another error, I believe. So, okay. Once all the plays are scored, what do we do with this data? This is a hell of a lot of data, right? It's like 7 or 8 gigs, by the way. What do we do with that data? Well, we do a lot with that data. So, first of all, and this gets into the cool part. I'm going to talk to what we do with the data. I'm going to show you some reports. So this is the fun stuff. Bases generated for each play are total for every player for each year, right? So we have a running total of what the total bases the player generated each year, okay? That's a count stat, right? It's like RBIs or home runs or steals or whatever. They're all count stats, right? So we call that T.B.G. We take the T.B.G. and we divide it by plate appearances, right? And we call that T.B.G.PA. So it's a rate stat. It's like a batting average. It's got 3 digits after three numbers after the period, whatever we want to call that. So it's a number of bases the player generates per plate appearance. And plate appearance is important here because we're not using at-bats, because at-bats is only 86, 87% of baseball. Plate appearances is 100% of baseball. Okay. T.B.G. is adjusted for park factor. You guys know what park factor is?
I know what it means, but I don't know how to calculate it.
Okay. Okay. Park factor means every stadium for every year gets a park factor indicating, well, is it a hitter's park or is it a pitcher's park? Essentially, that's what it is. So if a stadium gets a park factor of 105 one year, what that means is there's essentially 5% more offense in that stadium than other stadiums. Okay? If a park factor is 0.95, there's less offense in that stadium that particular year. So then we adjust numbers based on the park factor. So what we do is we have park factors which we calculate with our data. Other stats, they all have their own park factors, by the way, which they calculate the way they want. We calculate it the correct way, in case you were wondering. We really do. But here's the cool thing. We apply park factor on a play-by-play basis. Every play has a park factor applied to it. And then we have a second number. And based on the park where that particular play took place. Okay? So we have numbers that are adjusted for park factor. We have a T.B.G. that's adjusted for park factor and a T.B.G.PA that is adjusted for park factor. And I'll show you a little bit more about that. By the way, what we also do is we normalize against the league average. And we create a stat called T.B.G. plus. You guys have heard about that kind of thing? Normalization, OPS plus, ERA plus, there's a bunch of them. So we have ours. There's a bunch of stats out there now, by the way. I guess you might have noticed. Since the year 2000, there has been this proliferation of stats. I mean, you go out to Baseball Reference. They've created a good 50 stats of their own, besides the normal ones. Fangraphs has their own 50. Baseball Prospectus, they've created 50 stats. They've created some really cool stats, right? But they all have their own. By the way, they all have their own wars. Are you aware of that? WAR is not the same. WAR is different depending on who you get the number from. And, you know, Baseball Reference has batting WAR, defensive WAR, and a pitching WAR, and then an overall WAR for a player. Okay, so here's some more stats for you. Just what you wanted, right?
A question.
Yeah.
Why do you have T in the T.B.G. lowercase and the B.G. upper? Is that significant for some reason?
Our stat, we just totaled it with that lowercase t for total. Yeah. It's not significant. It doesn't mean anything except that's just the way we
Looks
named
cool.
it. We saw other stats with lowercase, like WOBA is with a lowercase w, weighted, and the other letters are uppercase. So that's why we do that with that T. It's branding, I suppose. Okay, possible bases generated, you'll see that on our reports for offense, by the way. And what we mean by that is how many possible bases, of the bases the guy could have generated, what percentage of them did he really generate? And it's another way of looking at this data that's really kind of cool. So basically, for every play, we identify the total bases that could have been generated, what we call total possible bases, we call it. So if there's nobody on base, and a guy comes up, the maximum total bases that could be generated is 4, if he hits a home run, right? If the bases are loaded, the maximum is 10, right? The grand slam is 10 bases. So every play is between 4 and 10 possible bases. And then what we do is we take the T.B.G, which is the bases that he did generate, we divide it by the possible bases that he could have generated to come up with a number of what percentage of bases did he really generate that were available to him. So that gives us another sort of rate stat, just to make sure that our reports have lots of columns, right? Okay, so then we have some information about park factor here, which I'm not going to get into it too much. We could spend a long time talking about park factor, by the way. We only apply park factor to the batter, by the way, to the bases that the batter generates. We don't apply it to running plays. We don't apply it to, of course, it's not applied to outs because you can multiply a 0 times anything. It doesn't matter. We don't apply it to walks or hit by pitch or interference, and we don't apply it to interleague games, or we don't use the interleague games to calculate park factor. That's what I really meant to say. So, because when we were first doing this, the teams weren't really playing the same interleague teams, right? So that would kind of throw it off. And we got that idea from Baseball Reference. Baseball Reference says, don't count interleague games, so we didn't. Anyway, I can show you a couple of examples. So you have to calculate park factor for every stadium and year. And that gets a little complicated when, they play a couple games in Mexico, stuff like that happens. So we have to have park factor on every stadium, right? And, we've had years where 2 teams use the same stadium. So we have to have 2 park factors for that. But here's a couple of examples. Let's say on a play, the batter gets 5, right? He's really a good hit. And the park factor is 105. What we do is we subtract 5% from that to essentially to equalize it. And so we have a park factor adjusted BBG, BBG being batter bases generated, is as a 4.75, okay? If the park factor is 0.95, we add 5% and it comes out to 5.25, okay? So now, if this is all new to you and you'd like to read something about park factor, get yourself a copy of The Hidden Game of Baseball by Pete Palmer and John Thorne from 1983 or 84. He has a chapter in there, and it just conclusively, or very well, makes the argument for park factor. Because there's tremendous differences in the amount of offense in different stadiums. And when this became really obvious was like in the 90s once the Rockies joined the league. And the Rockies park factor at that time was like 1.2 or something. It's really high. Guys were hitting 340 in Colorado and 260 everywhere else. It's not trivial. And
you count to talent on the team too.
Well, sure. But you look at games there and you look at games elsewhere, and it kind of figured out. There's like an accepted way of calculating. Yeah. And you can go out and get park factor. All kinds of guys publish park factor for every year. It has to be generated every year. There's some people who calculate park factor for right-handed batters and for left-handed batters. There might be a park factor for. Oh, no.
It could be different in April
You just
and
go
July.
on forever with this stuff.
It could be different in April and July too.
Jeez.
Well,
But we look through the whole season, so it should average out with it.
has the park factor changed from year to year in the same parks?
Yes.
Like
Oh, absolutely.
Has Rockies Park always been the most offensive?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and of course, then they started putting the balls in the humidors, is that what they're called? And that changed it, so the ball was a little bit heavier, and it would spin a little bit more, and it would move a little bit more, because it was not only were the balls flying further, it was that the pitches weren't breaking as much. So now they put balls in humidors in pretty much every stadium. Try to have some continuity. But I mean, there's an argument made that if Willie Mays had played where Hank Aaron played, Willie Mays would have had more home runs than Hank Aaron. Willie Mays played at Candlestick Park in the late 50s and 60s where it was horrible weather. These cold drizzles,
And if the 1954 World Series had started in Cleveland Stadium instead of the 258-foot left and right field foul post at the Polo Grounds, Dusty Rhodes' 2-3-run home runs in one game would have been easy outs.
Oh, yeah.
And Vic Wirtz's 460-foot smash that Willie Mays caught would have been a home run in any other part of the world.
Yeah, what stadium was that in?
Cleveland
The Polo Grounds.
Polo Grounds.
The Polo Grounds had that really long center field, right? Yeah. Okay. So we will have, in our reports, you'll see a T.B.G.P, so it's an adjusted number for the count, right? And a T.B.G.P.A, P. So the small p means the number is part factor adjusted. Okay. Oops. Okay, our normalized stats. Okay, what this basically, we take the T.B.G.P.A and we from a player and compare it to the league average. Okay, and to get a normalized number. Now, and the normalized number is above or below 100. 100 being average. Okay, and by league average, by the way, I don't mean major league average. I mean AL and NL. I was hung up on that question for about 2 months, by the way. I couldn't find anybody who could answer that question for me. But no, it's AL and NL, so it's not just one league, okay? And we have our pitching stat too. We have a TPS plus, so we have a normalized pitching stat, which we'll look at in just a minute. Okay, so let's take a look. Okay, here's one of our reports. This is the player year report. All right, it's sorted by T.B.G plus. So again, it's taking this number and comparing it to the league average. Now, by the way, this report has about 13,000 rows. Okay, these are like the top 30 rows. So these are the greatest player years. These are the cream of the cream, right? These are the baseball gods. Okay, these are not normal players, just so you keep that in mind. Now, I know this is kind of hard to read, especially for you guys over there, right? But the crazy thing here is that Joe Morgan is above 1921 Babe Ruth. Joe Morgan in 1976. I'm sorry, Babe. And the reason is, now this was a very good year for Joe Morgan, by the way. It was an MVP year. 1975, he was the MVP. And this is a player that the Houston Astros traded. It's like, what? Whatever. But if you look here, he didn't have the T.B.G that Babe Ruth had in 1921. But what he had is this T.B.G.P.A, or excuse me, T.B.G.P.A.P, there's a lot of P's in that. That number compared to the league average gave him the highest T.B.G plus. We're not saying that Joe Morgan was better than Babe Ruth, in 1921. But what this allows you to do is it allows you to compare players from different eras. That's what the normalized stats are for, right? Because we had the dead ball era, right, in the 19-teens, where batting averages were really low. Then we had the live ball era from what, 1920 to 1936 or something, where batting averages were really high and Babe Ruth was hitting a gazillion home runs. And then batting averages were low again in the 60s. And what happens is every time these things get out of hand, where pitching gets more control of the game, they change the rules. It was in the 60s they lowered the mound 6 inches, right? And so what was the big change between the dead ball era and the live ball era? That would have been 1920. Anybody know?
Yeah, the Walsh of the spitball.
They banned the spitball. Yep. They did one other thing, one other important thing. Anybody?
You made the ball tighter?
Well, yes. Yeah. I mean, that has affected batting for sure. Batting numbers, yes. The way they build the ball. Yeah. And I believe in the 20s, supposedly it was wound tighter. It went further, we know that much. The other thing they did is they required pitchers to throw clean baseballs. They were always roughing it up and putting all this dirt on it, so it was kind of grayish brown. It was harder for the batters to pick it out and see it. When they made the clean balls, that's why you see they'll use 30, 40 balls in a game. It's for that rule. And batting went kind of crazy in the 20s and 30s. In the 30s, I believe there's a year or two where the average batting average was 300. In the 60s, there's years where it's down to 245. So normalization allows you to compare that guy that has 245 in 1965 and that guy that has 300 in 1930. As far as normalization goes, they're equivalent, right? That's what normalization allows you to do, because you're comparing a batter's production to the league average. And then you can see, well, who's much further above. But this is not counting the count stats, right? It's the average stats that we're looking at here. Now you'll notice I highlighted in yellow the numbers that are the highest in those columns. And you can see in 1921, Babe had the highest number in 4 columns. Babe did pretty good in 1921, by the way. It's like, pretty good, Babe. Yeah, and he's the only player who ever got over 1,000 T.B.G. in one season. Now, you'll see Lou Gehrig, 1931, his T.B.G.P. beats Babe by about 1.
Yeah.
You know, so it got adjusted. And that depends on where you get your hits, right? Because we're adjusting each play. So, come on, come back. There we go, okay. So, okay. So, and you can see he's got the highest possible bases for that year. Of 13,000 player years, he's got 4 of the top numbers. It's absolutely unbelievable. Okay, and of course you see a lot of Barry Bonds, you see a lot of Lou Gehrig, you see Willie McCovey has a year up there. Aaron Judge is in there for 2024. Mickey Mantle. George Brett, Dick Allen has a year, Ted Williams. Okay, running base stats. So, as I mentioned before, we keep track of these running plays, right? And we have a different database columns where we keep track of the running bases that are gained. So, it's pretty convenient for us to count up the running stats, the running numbers. Okay, so we have a stat we call T.B.G.R. And again, we just count the number of bases gained or lost for a runner, okay? So T.B.G.R. is actually a subset of T.B.G. It's part of T.B.G., but we can look at it separately, okay? And it's kind of fun. The other thing we do, which we did recently, is we added an extra bases stat here. Because we figured the way we were calculating this base running number wasn't really complete. We weren't counting extra bases that the guy gets. So this is one stat that we created that is in addition to T.B.G. It's counted separately from T.B.G. But what we do is we then take the extra bases that the guy gets and we add it to T.B.G.R. for a stat we call X-T.B.G.R. So we consider it one of the most comprehensive base running stats available. It covers 23 plays, 23 running plays. Okay, let me show you. So here's the plays that count for T.B.G.R., which we basically went over this earlier, right? These are the plays where a batter can gain bases. These are the plays, the runner can gain bases. Here's the column where the runner loses bases. And other advanced, by the way, I put this in here just for completeness. This is from really old games where a player advanced, but they're not really sure how we got there. So Retro Chic scores it as another advance, but we count it, right? The batter doesn't do anything, but somehow that runner got up there. They must mostly be steals, but they just don't know. There could have been an error or something. Okay, so there's the plays for T.B.G. are. Here's the plays we count for extra bases. So what we have for extra base is defined as a play where a runner gains more bases than the batter provides. It's just that simple. So if in this first case, this first one's single, 1-3. So there's a runner on first, batter singles, runner ends up on third. So he advanced 2 bases on a 1-base hit. Okay, so he gained 1 more than the batter gave him, basically.
There was a time that those actually counted as stolen bases.
There you go. I hope they're not counted that way and historically, because that would mess up our stats.
But in that case, what's the batter getting?
Well, the batter is scored by T.B.G. exactly as we talked about before. This is a separate thing. So this is in addition to T.B.G. It's not mixed up.
Yeah, because otherwise you're double counting.
Right. All these extra bases are essentially double counted, yes. So we're giving the runner some credit for the bases he gains in addition to what the batter provides, in a sense. According to some very strict rules, right? But yes, you're right. If the runner gets to third, that has been already credited to the batter. But we realized, the base runner's doing some good stuff here. We have to give him credit for that. And this is not really unique. There are other sites that have an extra bases stat, right? Like Baseball Reference. But they only count these first 3 plays, by the way. So here's the single where the guy goes home from second, right? And here's the double where the guy goes from first to home. So he goes, there's 2 bases on the hit, but he goes 3 bases, right? So we count an extra base. We have for flyouts where a guy advances on a flyout, a tag up, right? We count those as extra bases because the batter's giving you 0, but the runner's moving up, right? So we count those. So from first to second, second to third, third to home. There's 3 more. And we do 2 groundouts. Second to third, as long as there's nobody on first, right? So we're not counting, he has to be not forced. The runner cannot be forced, or we don't count it, right? So for the ground out second to third, first base is empty. There's a runner on second, and the batter hits a ground out, and the guy advances on the ground out. Yeah?
Very specific question here.
Yeah.
Guy hits a ground ball, runners on first, ground ball to first base. First baseman fields the ball, tags first base. At that point, the runner's no longer forced to go to second. Does he get the extra base?
Well, he's already on second at that point, right?
Was halfway, so.
But we don't count that as an extra base.
You don't count that as an extra
yeah,
base.
and you see it's not up here.
Okay.
Because he's forced. If there's a guy on first and the runner hits a ground ball, he has to run to second, so he's forced.
Until they
He
tag
can
first.
come back to first.
Until they tag first, then he doesn't have
If
to.
he tags first, then the runner can come back to first.
Okay, but that would not be an extra base anyway,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So in other words, for the 2 versus 3, first base has to be empty, so he's not forced. For the third to home, either first or second has to be empty for us to count that. And in some cases, he can go other bases beyond that, like say, here's one. So the fly out first to second, if he goes to third or home, we don't really care about that, right? We only care about the base where he goes from first to second. That's really the extra base as far as we're concerned. If there's an error or something and he goes additional bases, well, we're not going to count that. That's not really an extra base as far as we're concerned. We just count that. In
All
other
of a
words,
sudden you don't like errors?
well, no, we have no opinion on errors.
I don't know, it sounds like you
For
do.
T.B.G, we count those bases, of course. We count all bases with T.B.G. But we have a limit to what exactly we count for extra bases. Okay.
But the guy tags up, he runs to third on the fly out.
Okay,
They
from
make an
second to
error,
third.
they make an error, they
And he
try to
goes
throw
home.
him out, and he goes home.
Yeah.
You don't want to give him that other base.
No, we don't count the second one. No,
Alright.
we don't count that. We just feel that it's like, it doesn't really fit our definition of an extra base. It's like, well, okay, he made the extra, went 2 extra bases, I suppose you could say, but the second one was given to him from the error.
Yeah, but you told us you don't care about errors.
Well, for
I want to
for-
appeal. I
for
want
T-
to. Can I
for
write an
TB
appeal
For
to your
TBG,
system?
we don't. And by the way, let me point out, we actually count more extra bases than anybody else, as far as I know. I don't think other places are necessarily. Come back. I don't. Okay. What are we doing here? Okay. I don't think anybody else is counting like a lot of these. When you see extra bases, it's usually these 3. We count these extra ones, so we're counting more than most. Okay, but you pointed out a little inconsistency here. We will take it under advisement. Absolutely.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Okay, now, so here's our extra bases. Yeah.
On your chart, you don't have runner on first, and he scores on a single. Does that ever happen? That's why you
I'm
don't
sure it
have
has happened, but we figure something else must have happened to allow him to get from third to home. I'm sure it's happened. It's probably happened 1,000 times.
Everything's.
Yeah, but we don't count 2 extra bases for that. We figure something else happened to allow him to go home, right? We don't think he would be that fast. You know, some problem happened with the defense to allow him to get home. So we don't want to have to get into that and judge those plays, you know, to figure out, well, which ones are we going to count, which ones aren't we going to count? Okay? Okay, so here's our report, our player year report for our player year report for extra bases, just extra bases, okay? Again, as I said, we take this total and we add it to our TBGR report. But we also have the extra bases report that we generated. And by the way, on almost every category of our reports, we have player year, we have player career, and we have team year. So it really gets into some cool stuff. I'm just showing you a selection of a few of these reports. Okay, so these, now the first thing that jumps out to me is, okay, we have Ron LaFleur, 1978. Okay, Willie Wilson, 1980, great player. Kenny Lofton, Vince Coleman, Lonnie Smith. Yeah, we know about these guys. They were running like crazy in the 80s, right? But here, who's this guy? Augie Gallen, right? This is wild. Who is this guy? He has the most extra bases back to 1911 for a season. Who is this guy? Does anybody know this?
New York
You know?
I know the name. But
I was not familiar with him. He played for the Cubs and then for some other teams. He played from the early 30s into the late 40s. He had a great eye at the plate. He had a very high on-base percentage. He led the league in walks a few times. He led the league in steals a couple of times. But he was really terrorizing the league in 1935. He was only 23 years old this year, by the way. So he has more extra bases than any player year. And we're talking about like 9,000 to 10,000 player years, right? And he has the very top. So somebody has to write about Augie Gallen and his extra base mastery, you know, just amazing.
I bet there's a SABR bio on
There is a bio. Oh yes, I've read the bio. Yes, there is. SABR bio. Yeah, if you're in Baseball Reference, there's a bio link for the player page, which will take you to a bio, and then often there's a link for the SABR bio, which is even longer than the bio in Baseball Reference. So there is one for Augie Gallen. Great player. That's all there is to it. He was on coming in with nobody on base every inning, right? And closers who are coming in most of the time without anybody on base. So
Couldn't you just take it against total potential bases surrendered?
we could. And I'm not sure if we do that or not.
All right, there's a new one for you.
We could do that.
Also, closers back in the 70s, 80s, they came in the middle innings.
Right,
and pitched 4 innings.
right. They sometimes come in middle innings. Yes, we're aware of that. But a lot of times they come in the beginning. So it just seemed fairer.
And also, I'd say the last 10, 15 years, that the managers of baseball figured out it's better to bring your closer in
Yes.
for a clean inning. Or
Yeah,
you release.
yeah. Well, we include closers on the report based on the number of saves, and number of a certain percentage of games started. We have say something like, oh, the games started have to be less than 30%, and you have to have a certain number of saves, some criteria like that to include them. But yeah, so we don't look at if they come in the middle innings. And some pitchers appear on multiple reports, by the way. We do that. Like, for instance, I don't know, who was the guy with Atlanta? That was, what's his name? Smoltz. So he appears on the starters report, and he appears on the closers report. And he's in the Hall of Fame.
He is.
But by the way, these guys, these relievers, they don't get much love from Major League Baseball, by the way. If you're not a starter or a closer, you don't get any attention. And there's very few awards given out to relievers. I mean, there are some awesome reliever years. And they don't really get much attention. There aren't awards for these guys, you know. Middle relievers are, okay. And I hadn't shown you a team year report before, so I decided to do that with TBS for our sample. And by the way, there are over 2,500 team years. Go back to 1911. So this is your 25 of some of the greatest pitching years. Now, this was very odd. 2017, Cleveland Indians were sorted by TBS Plus, by the way, okay? And we're comparing this number, TBSI, to the league average on this particular sort. By the way, all these reports you can look at in Google Documents. You can sort them any way you want. You can filter them if you want. And in fact, a lot of the pitching reports I will filter and to remove 2020 because it's only 60 games, so it just doesn't seem fair to compare a 60-game season to some of these other seasons. But the Cleveland Indians had a awesome pitching staff in 2017. Corey Kluber, I believe, won the Cy Young that year, and they had, you know, several starters with over 15 wins and stuff. They just had an awesome pitching staff. But here we have the Baltimore Orioles, 1972, the lowest TBSIP. So they're like the 25th. Still, you know, these are remarkable pitching staffs, by the way. They're all remarkable. A lot of Los Angeles Dodgers here. And by the way, you'll notice there's some war years in the top of this report. That's something that somebody should look into, pitching during the war years. Like and of course, if you go down a little bit further in this report, it becomes dominated by the dead ball era. There's a bunch of teams from the teens. But Baltimore Orioles, awesome pitching staff. You see Baltimore Orioles 1969 up here too. I think I have some information. Let me check something. Oh, here we go. Here, I sorted it by TBSIP. And you see Baltimore Orioles 1972, the lowest. Here we have Baltimore Orioles 1969, Baltimore Orioles 1968. Well, you guys all know, right? If you follow the Baltimore Orioles.
71 was the 420 game
It was the 420 game.
Oh, okay, yeah. I'm sure it's just a little bit further down, you know.
Yeah, the one you would
Jim
think
Palmer,
would be there. Yeah.
Cuellar,
Yeah.
McNally. I mean,
Dobson.
Amazing pitching staff. Okay.
There's one of your Dobson.
Oh yeah, you see. By the way, you do see some dead ball era teams in here. Look at them all, and then some more teams in the 40s. But this is sorted differently. It's sorted by this column, right? So, anyway, okay. Let me continue. Oh, here's a cool report. I said, well, we've got these normalized numbers for team offense and team pitching. So why don't we add them together and identify statistically some of the greatest teams in baseball history? And there they are. There's the first 20 or so of them. They didn't necessarily all win the World Series, by the way. But here we have Seattle Mariners, 01, 116 wins. 716 winning percentage. I think the 2020 Dodgers in that strike shortened year have a higher winning percentage by like 1/100 of a percent.
Played 60 games though.
That's it, yeah.
Well, it's 1906 Chicago Cubs.
What's that?
The 1906 Chicago Cubs would have a higher percentage.
Okay,
They won 116 games in 154 game
yeah,
season.
I hear you. We don't go back that far, we don't have enough data for that, but yeah, hopefully someday we will.
What's the top team there?
That's the 1939 New York Yankees. And Joe DiMaggio was on that team. Anybody else remember who else was on that team? If you look,
Joe Gordon.
if you look up, you can look up, they have a page. That team has a page in Wikipedia. And it'll tell you there's other people who have said argued that is the greatest team in baseball history.
Yeah.
Sorry, babe. But here we have the 42 Yankees. There's a World War II team, huh? 27 Yankees, there they are. Again, there's 2,500 rows in here. So, you know what's fun is to look at these reports and sort by TBS or by total performance. This is the two numbers added in reverse order.
Yeah,
So look at the worst teams.
Yeah, that would be.
And let me tell you, there's a lot of Philadelphia teams. The Philadelphia Athletics had some horrendous seasons to be surpassed only by the Philadelphia Phillies. I mean, in the 40s, in the 30s, and the 40s, the Phillies had this horrendous owner. He just didn't have any money, and he was trying to sell they took the team away from him in like 44 or something. And he had sold, the way he was trying to support the team was by selling players. He sold everybody he could. They had one of the worst teams and worst stretches of baseball. And by the way, the Philadelphia Phillies, I don't know if you know this, but they have more losses than any professional sports team.
Right.
They have a great heritage in Philadelphia, let me tell you.
It's not even close.
It's not even close, yes. When did the Baltimore Orioles start?
54.
See, there's the problem right there. That's the problem. The Orioles would give us a run for their money.
Modern.
Yes,
Orioles
yes.
started at 54.
Well, you'd have
Okay.
to add the St. Louis Browns,
If they had the Browns,
which
yeah.
were the Orioles before.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They were
Okay.
terrible.
Good, good. All right. Okay, other fun reports. This is where it really gets fun, I think. Most T.B.G. by a player in a game. Walker Cooper in 1930, 1949. Anybody familiar with Walker Cooper?
Know the name?
He was like the Johnny Bench of the 40s. And he had himself one hell of a game against the Chicago Cubs. It wasn't even at Wrigley, by the way.
I assume that's
So-
Mark Whitten's fault.
Oh, yeah.
That's Mark Whitten's 4 home run game. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Just amazing. Anthony Rendon, I haven't looked up the box score for this one yet, but Anthony Rendon's game is really amazing.
Before he was in a wheelchair.
Aldis Garcia, this was just a couple years ago. I mean, he was a beast that year. He went nuts for a few games. Shohei,
So here we Tommy.
last September
Yeah.
against the Marlins.
Oh, my
Tortured the Marlins for a couple of hours. I think he went 6 for 6. Now he has a 33, but he lost 2 bases trying to get to going from second to third on a ground ball, or else he would have had 35. He would have been tied for second. And that kid from
Only he
Oakland earlier this year went 6 for 6
Yeah.
with 4 home runs. He's going to be on here. I think he'll be about 29.
I know like Kyle Schwarber.
Schwarber's going to be, I think, around 25.
Suarez.
So,
Yeah.
you know, we're down to 29 here. I think we have about 250 rows in this. These are, you know, some of the most amazing performances,
Yeah.
offensive performances. I want to point something out to you. Let's see here. If we look, you can see, where is he at? 93.8 possible bases gained. This is, what is this? Josh Hamilton. 5 for 5.
Yeah.
4 home runs and a
Yeah.
double.
Yeah,
It was here.
a bad day.
It was here.
Yeah, that was a
Yes.
bad day for it.
What is it with these Rangers coming in and torturing the
Yeah.
Orioles?
Yeah.
I have let's look at this. Here he is. Here he is. May 8th, 2012. 93.8%
Yeah.
possible bases generated. Nobody else has a number like that in that particular report. That is a phenomenal. He didn't get the top, but for bases possible bases generated, he got the top. That was a phenomenal performance. And you can see highlights of this on YouTube, by the way. And afterwards, he's kind of nonchalant. He's like 6'5", 240, pretty big boy. And every time, each home run, the same player was on base. The shortstop, Elvis Andrus, was on base. So if there were more people on base when he got his hits, he would have had more T.B.G, right? And that's what happened with the catcher from the 40s. There was like 2 people on base every time he got a hit. I think he went 6 for 7. So he was driving in a bunch. Rangers beat the Orioles 10-3. Orioles fans gave him a standing ovation after the 4th inning. That's cool. That's cool. Okay. He was an AL MVP in 2010. You know, he had real serious drinking problems, which really curtailed his career.
Drink and drunk.
Right, and smoking, I think, was even included in that. Yeah. Okay.
He was in rehab a couple of times.
All right. Okay, by the way, I sorted this just for Orioles, so you guys could see a couple things that some Orioles did. Here's the rank in terms of T.B.G. for a game. 73, the highest. Eddie Murray against the California Angels at Anaheim Stadium with 26. Nelson Cruz, I didn't even know he was on the Orioles.
One season. 2014.
Okay. Well, he had a hell of a game on September 7th, or September 7th, 2014. Melvin Mora
There you go.
in 08
He's in the Team Hall of Fame.
in Detroit. Oh, is he in the Team Hall of Fame? Okay. 25. Here's a little bit of information out here that we include from their box score. You get a kind of an idea. And Albert Bell. How many years was he on the Orioles?
2 maybe?
2, okay. He had a 24 game.
Mostly.
And here's our boy Cal Ripken. 24. Those guys are tied for 200th place in that. So, okay. Let's go on a little bit. Okay, most T.B.G. by a team in a game. Now, maybe you want to ignore that first row. Texas Rangers 30, Baltimore Orioles 3.
I was at that game.
I was going to ask that. That is remarkable.
It was
Wow.
first game of a doubleheader.
Right.
That's right. And Texas won the other side of it too, right? They scored 9. So that's the most runs by any team in a single day. 39 runs.
Now, what's interesting is, I'm from Cleveland, so I'm a big Cleveland fan.
Okay.
Texas brought in the 8th inning Paul Shuey, who was a Cleveland closer and the #1 draft choice in the 90s.
Oh.
He was a closer for about a year. So he was at the end of his string. So the 8th inning, they're up 24 to something.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting with a friend who had lifetime Oriole tickets since 1979. And I turned to her and I said, you know, we're taking, what's the most runs any team ever scored?
Oh.
And I think the door's short. And I said, can you get to 30?
Yeah.
Shuey gives up like 6 runs in the 8th inning and they tied 30.
Well, this was the most runs scored back to 1897, I believe.
And the same day of the doubleheader, I'm thinking the Orioles are coming back. And I said, you know what would be interesting if the Orioles won the game and then you total up the total runs for both games. The Orioles split the doubleheader and they would outscored like 38 to 8 or something.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they lost the second game by 1 or 2 runs.
So that was a rough one. Yep.
You think
to put it
so?
mildly.
Yeah, you think?
Yeah. Okay. Here's some information about that game. You know, I guess you guys probably don't need to
Yeah, we
hear.
got it here.
This is
Dave Tremblay.
most runs since the Chicago Colts beat the Louisville Cardinals in June 29th, 1897. 36 games. So it wasn't the most. That must make you feel better.
I think Daniel Cabrera started that game for the Orioles.
Started for the Orioles and gave up 6 runs in 5
I didn't
innings.
see that, yeah.
And then they gave up another 24 innings in the next, in the relievers.
He started that game, yeah.
And there was this reliever for Texas that came in and pitched 3 innings and he got the save.
Yep.
Might be one of the most undeserved saves. But the 3-inning rule, you know.
Jeez.
And Texas was in last place By the way, they had traded Kenny Lofton and Mark
Yes,
Teixeira
yes, they did,
at
yeah.
the deadline, so they were just playing it out.
Yeah.
It was just so crazy. Again, this is in YouTube. You can watch highlights of this. And the players were like in a daze after this game. They were like, even the Rangers were like, we didn't know what was going on. We didn't know how this happened. We just
Showed up for batting practice.
just an absolutely astonishing performance. And there's a few others in there, but oh, here we go. Here's a couple by the Orioles. 57th place, 106 T.B.G. Orioles 23, Blue Jays 1 back in 2000. And we have a couple games in 1999. Who was hitting all this offense for the Orioles in 1999 and 2000? Who did they have?
Cal
Ripken?
Ray Anderson was on those.
Who is it?
Palmero was there.
Palmero, okay.
Will Clark had the most RBIs in that.
Okay, cool. All right, so they had some good offense back then. They pasted a few teams here, as you can see. These are some historic games. All right.
Do you have, the Indians beat the Yankees 22-0 in 2002 or 3.
Okay, it might be on that report. I didn't check for that. It's probably on there, depending on how many bases
Did you
they
ever
got.
do a stat where you normalize the runs produced by the pitcher that he's up against, by hit quality of the pitcher?
By quality of the pitcher, no. But we do have a couple of these, these outrageous
You could just
games.
run it against your pitcher number, so you'd normalize it. So if I got a big TPG against a pitcher with an impressive pitcher number, that would be a more impressive
And rank
accomplishment.
the performances that way,
rank
with the two
just
numbers.
normalize
That would
it.
be interesting. I wish my database guy was here, and he could, roll his eyes, of course, and think, oh my God.
I can't believe they're making me do this.
Yeah, right, exactly. Okay, most T.B.G. by both teams in a game. So this, you could say, is what games had the most offense in baseball history. And we have two games of the Cubs against the Phillies in Wrigley. I know about the 79 game. You can see those highlights. I believe that was 10 innings. I believe that was Schmidt had 4 home runs, including one in the 10th.
Yep.
But 1922, Chicago Cubs, Philadelphia Phillies, 26-23, 245 T.B.G. Look at that. That's like 24 above the next closest game. Unbelievable game. I looked at the box score of that game one time, and I was just trying to see what happened here that there were so many. I couldn't
There were
quite.
no home runs in that game?
Well,
The
now this
26
is
to
just
23?
the visiting team. That would just be the
Oh,
Phillies.
oh.
I didn't include the entire because it's too wide. And by the
But
way,
still, 23 runs with no home runs.
yeah, they had a hell of a lot of singles or something.
Doubles, triples.
11 base on balls. 3 must be steals, doubles, triples. I don't know. 20 singles.
How long did that game?
Yeah. So we need to do some research on that game. That's a historic game. I don't know if SABR has a Games Project article on that game. They might. They might. But do they know it's the most offense? Do they know it's the most offense? Probably not. Because nobody's ever been crazy enough to do this kind of stuff. Okay. What did I want to look at here? Let's see. I think I searched in here, and there weren't too many games with Baltimore in here, so I don't have any to pull out for that. But this 1979 game, there are highlights on YouTube for that 1979 game if you feel like looking at it. Okay.
The MLB Network shows that every winter.
Do they? I've never subscribed to that, but that's cool. That's cool. There's a lot of Philadelphia games up here. Philadelphia Athletics, here's one. Here's another one. Philadelphia teams are in here. Look at all these Philadelphia teams in here. I know there's one in here where Von Hayes hit 2 home runs in the first inning against the Mets. Wow. And they ended up scoring like 25 runs or something. But, okay, let's see. Okay, here's a cool one. This is basically best base running in our database. XTBGR is base running, right? So we have a TBGR column, our extra bases column, and our XTBGR. And you'll see the first couple are, and these first two games are not in the SABR Games project, so these are a couple that could be written about. Johnny Noon. You guys are familiar with Johnny Noon? Triple play, yes. Born in Baltimore. Died in Baltimore. Yep. 9 TBGR without any extra bases. And but in 7 innings. I don't know why this was a second game of a doubleheader, by the way. I don't know why it only went 7 innings. They won by 10. Do you think there was a 10-run rule or something in a doubleheader? Could have been rain. Could have been rain.
Maybe they pulled him for a pinch runner.
But he did it in 7 innings. So, and then we have Bert Campaneris here. Remember, I mentioned him earlier. 9 TBGR. He won. Athletics won 4-2. Bert Campaneris scored all 4 runs.
Wow.
There was no RBIs in the game. Every time Bert Campaneris was on, he was running. They were throwing errors. Nobody had to hit him home. He beat the White Sox that day all by himself. Amazing performance. Okay. Who else do we know? There's Ricky Henderson, Scott Pasednik up in there. Bernard Spahn had a great game.
Kenny Lofton and the Cleveland Indians against Baltimore in the 90s.
Okay. Kenny Lofton. Oh yeah. Okay. Against the Orioles, 12-11. Anybody at that game? What was the date of that? That was September 3rd, 2000. One thing I should point out, for all of these reports about specific games, we have a game ID column. And I didn't show that in some of the other reports just so I could show more data rows, columns. But for any of these games, you can copy the game ID, paste it in Baseball Reference, hit enter, and the box score comes up. Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. So you can look at those box scores really easily. I mean, it just takes a copy paste. That's all it takes. And then sometimes the SABR site will have even a little more data than the Baseball Reference site, and there's usually a link to the SABR site's box score from the Baseball Reference site's box score. So let's look at something here. Johnny Noon, there he is. He played about 7 seasons in the majors. Look at this. He was a contact hitting backup first baseman. I mean, he never played another position other than first base in 6 or 7 years in the majors. All he did was play backup first base, and then he was a pinch hitter and a pinch runner. On this game, second game of a doubleheader against the Yankees, Navin Field in Detroit in 1927, 9 TBGR. The Tigers won the second game, 14-4. By the way, in the first game, Babe Ruth appears on another report where he gained like 25 or something. And he went, he had like 3 home runs. And, so both games in that doubleheader made the top portion of one of these reports. I was stunned when I saw that. I didn't realize that until a couple days ago. It's the same date. Yeah. Noon went 5 for 5, all singles, got 5 stolen bases, and advanced 4 bases on throwing errors, and scored 5 runs. So he terrorized the Yankees. The Yankees are like, after 7 innings, that's enough. We surrender. We just want to go home now. We won the first game. We're happy with that. So 4 days later, Noon still home twice in a doubleheader against the Washington Senators, once in each game. Amazing. They used to do that a lot. They used to try to steal home a lot, and he was successful. On May 31, 1927, this is just like a month and a half or 2 months before this July game, he recorded the first unassisted triple play to end a game. He was playing first base, right? So he catches a line drive, He doubles the player off, and then he runs to second base to get there before the guy comes back to second base. I mean, he could have thrown it to the second baseman, but apparently, from what I read, there had been another triple play that he had read about a few days before, and he was thinking about triple plays. He had triple plays on his brain. So he ran to second base and got there before the guy. Maybe the guy was trying to steal from second or something and was way over near third, and Noon beat him over there.
Well, 1920 World Series, Bill Wambsgans, the Cleveland second baseman, made a triple play by catching line drive, stepping on second, and throwing the first or something, or catching the guy in first or second. So maybe that's what Ian had read about.
Oh, okay, okay. That's the one I had read about. The other one?
Could be.
It was just a couple days before this one.
1920.
Yeah.
World Series.
Oh, okay. 1920 World Series. All right, all right. But this was an unassisted triple play to end a game.
Wow.
Do you guys know of another unassisted triple play to end a game?
The Orioles had a triple play to end the game, but it wasn't unassisted.
The Phillies had one, I think it was in 2009, 2008. It was Eric Bramlett, I think, was a backup second baseman.
Bruntlett. I remember that name.
He ended, and it was at near the end of the season too. It was like a very dramatic game. And he catches a line drive, steps on second, and then chases down the guy who was coming from first to end the game. That's just amazing. Only 2 times it ever happened, apparently, in baseball history. So Noon went on to coach and to scout in the majors and the minors for the rest of his career. So, pretty interesting Baltimore guy. And died in Baltimore in 1990.
I did not
Oh,
know
yeah, a
that.
long life, 90 years.
Yeah. Pretty cool, pretty interesting guy. And apparently he was quite a storyteller.
Oh, yeah?
So they've got,
Well,
apparently...
he had a story to tell.
Yes, he sure did. Yeah, he had several stories to tell, didn't he? Just from, and by the way, the coach of the
I'd hang out
1920s
just to hear
Tigers,
that
Ty
story.
Cobb.
Ty Cobb.
But yeah, a backup first baseman is on the roster. You don't see that. You haven't seen that. I don't know. I mean, there's utility players, but they can play multiple positions, right? They're not just stuck playing first base. And in his bio, there's some stuff about how Ty Cobb really wanted him and had to argue with the ownership of the Tigers to get him. So this might be my last report sample, by the way. So this is worst base running in baseball history, right? The most bases lost in a game, right? So this is really cool stuff. Joe Judge, Washington Senators, 1916, lost 9 bases in a game, according to our scoring, right? So if you get thrown out trying to
Steal home.
move up on ground balls and stuff, you know, trying to score on fly balls, and you're slow, you get thrown out several times, you can add up 9.
Yeah, but you got to do it from like
It's
second
the
and
most
third.
ever, back to 1911.
Can you
Nobody's
tell-
got more than that.
Can you tell if these players were slow runners or just bad instincts?
Yeah. Hey, okay, Bing Miller. I have a photo of this guy, as a matter of fact. I don't think I put it in here, though. Oh, I do have a couple more reports. Hang on a second. Bing Miller of the Athletics in 1924, -9. He got thrown out trying to score from third 3 times. You would think after the second time, you'd kind of be a little cautious, but no, he kept going. What's that?
The coach.
Maybe. He's a big, stocky guy. He was a power hitter. He had like over 1,000 RBIs in his career. If you go out to my website and you'll see for that report, there's a little article that I've written, and if you click that article, you'll see a picture of Bing Miller being thrown out at home. Not in this particular game, in another game.
That was
But
a
it's
special.
it's just cool. It's just it's a beautiful photo.
Federal League on it, too.
What's that?
Through the Federal League, I see.
We have the Federal League. Yeah, the Federal League was called is considered a major league. So yes, we include 2 years of the Federal League, yes. Oh, by the way, here's the game, Trispeaker, where is he? There he is, Trispeaker, where he got thrown out twice at home, trying to steal home in one game.
Wow.
But he had two bases that he gained as extra bases, so he's not absolutely at the bottom. But that's a historic game too. You know, who would have thought Tris Speaker? But again, I wondered, is that a record for being thrown out trying to steal home? Like, has anybody actually been thrown out trying to steal home 3 times? I don't think so, because I think it would have appeared here, right? And I would know, because I did look up these -9s. And so I think that must be a record. I mean, I haven't done a sophisticated SQL search on the database to try to find more, but at any rate.
Cobb has the most steals at home.
Cobb has the most steals of home?
Probably has the most thrown out too.
54.
Probably does, yeah.
He got 54.
What year was Tris Speaker?
That was 27. July 17th, 27. A lot of stuff going on
Big
in
year for
July
baseball.
27.
Big
Yeah,
year for baseball.
big year, yeah. Okay. Okay, pitcher meltdown report. 1 inning. So the most T.B.G. given up by a pitcher in a single inning. Some of these guys didn't even get through the inning, by the way. So here's the inning where they had their issues. Here's the number of bases they gave up. 52. Jeez, look at this guy. Lefty O'Doul in 23.
He was a pretty good pitcher.
Yeah, it was.
You know, it might have been somewhere they were losing,
He
and
was
the
drunk.
the manager's like, I don't want to burn the bullpen, so just stay out there. And
Suck it
good
up.
luck to you. You know.
Suck it up.
So,
Any Orioles on there?
16 batters in that inning.
Whoa. Oh
Any
my
Orioles on there?
Jeff Ballard.
They left him in.
Oh, I see him,
Oh,
Jeff
yes.
Ballard, yeah.
Hang on a second, let me see. Oh, here we go. Jeff Ballard, there he is. So I sorted just by Baltimore
Yeah.
Orioles. So we've got 2 guys, Jeff Ballard in 91,
Yeah.
Mike Boddicker in 83. And by the way, I noticed these guys actually, they weren't even taken out. They kept going. Like each of these guys pitched at least 3 innings
Taking one
in a game.
15.
What's that?
You're taking one 15.
Yeah, yeah.
What's the score of that Tigers
Pitching
Orioles
staff
game?
is probably.
Tigers 9, Orioles 5.
Not even that.
And this game, the Ballard game, Indians 10, Orioles 4, he had the most problems in the first inning, but he ended up pitching 3 innings. Gave up 9 in the first inning, and Indians won with 10. They only got 1 more run, but that was enough.
That Indian team was the worst team they lost 102 games.
Oh, really? In 91, did they?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. So this is fun stuff, you know. I love this. Mass bases surrendered by a pitcher in a game, by a single pitcher in a game. So we could do most bases surrendered by a team in a game, but it would be just the opposite of most bases gained by a team in a game, right? It would be the opposite. So we already have that in a sense, right? So, but this is by a player, by one guy in a game. Oh, this guy, look at this. This game went 18 innings. So you can understand why they're giving up a lot of bases. He pitched 17 of them.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
I wonder how many pitches
So,
he threw.
Yeah.
Wasn't 100, I'll tell you that.
Well, his team won too.
Did they win?
Yeah.
Athletics. The Athletics won. Yeah, 18.
I don't know.
Hey, that game I was talking about where Bing Miller got thrown out at home 3 times.
Yeah.
The Athletics won the game.
That was when they used to have the 200 pitch rule.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, you got look at this. 103 TBS.
Why do you have St. Louis Browns in a box in red and bluey, but 8 or 9 rows down from the top?
That's just where the highlight ended.
Oh, that's just when I did the screenshot, I just happened to have the cursor in that cell.
Oh, okay.
So that's total random. I know there's some sort of more modern game in here. You look, it's all games in the teens and the 20s, and some in the 30s. So of course they didn't use relievers that often back then, or as often, right? So they kept guys in there. I mean, you know.
It would be interesting, when did the pitching staffs expand? It used to be, back in the 60s, 70s, you had maybe a 9-man.
Yeah, right.
9-man pitching staff.
Right. 4 relievers and the bullpen, yeah.
Now it's 13,
Right.
13 pitchers,
Right.
starters and relievers.
In the In the playoffs, yeah, it is 13 pitchers. They limit it to 13 pitchers, 26 total in the playoffs. Didn't help the Phillies. So, anyway.
You know what'll help the Phillies? A new name.
It's the quality of the pitchers.
Can I get out? I guess I can get out here to the web.
You should be able
Can I?
to.
Let me
Just
try that.
click
real
one of
quick.
the tabs
Just
on
open
the
a new
top.
tab at the top.
Oh, yes, okay. Yeah. Okay. And here's our website. And I just wanted to show you, pull up one report. See you later, guys.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
so
coming
much.
by.
Awesome.
Cool.
Just
cool.
fantastic.
Tell somebody with some money, please, so that they can contact me and try to lease this from us. Okay, so here's most bases lost as a base runner in a single game. And here we have this little article I wrote. It's a little out of date. There's the Joe Judge game. Out trying to score on a grounder, -3. Out advancing from second to third, -2. Caught stealing second, -1. Out trying to score from second on a single, -3. That's how you get -9. And it doesn't sound that unusual, does it? But it really is unusual to get thrown out that many times.
Mike, when did you start doing this?